Welcome to episode number 6 of the Blitz Take. I am here with Sports Illustrated's Dawgs Daily Brooks Austin, and I'm excited to see what he has to say about Georgia's upcoming season and everything else beside that. So thank you for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, no doubt. How are you today, Alex?
I'm good.
Good.
So my first question is, what are your initial thoughts on this team and heading into the season?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to replace a lot of guys, right? Just about to release an article on SI.com. I think it's probably the biggest talking point entering the season. You have 15 guys get drafted, 8 of those on offense, 6 of those on defense, and a special teams guy. So you lost good players everywhere, all across the board. So that's the biggest talking point, as is most of the cases when you're defending a national title. You think about LSU a couple years ago, they had 7 guys get drafted, I think, in the first 2 rounds. And then you add on to their success the year after that with their underclassmen getting drafted. So your roster can get depleted pretty quickly if you're not carefully. Luckily for Georgia, they recruited at a really, really high level for 6 years now under Kirby Smart, going on 7. So when you look at their talent acquisition, Kirby Smart said it best during the SEC media days. It's not a matter of talent or lack thereof. It's a matter of experience. So I think early on in the year, you'll kind of see them knock off, not even cobwebs. You'll see them kind of get their feet wet. And just in terms of being football players, I think a lot of young guys at a lot of important positions. So that's kind of the initial takeaway going into the season. And we'll find out far much, more obviously as things develop.
What are your thoughts on the depth chart for this season?
Like I said, it's a lot of question marks. I think the on offense, the only real open battles, I mean, you can argue wide receiver 3, slot receiver, who's going to, take a lot of reps at the slot. But, A.D. Mitchell is going to be your primary X. Ladd McConkey is going to work a lot at Z. Brock Bowers is back at tight end and healthy. Darnell Washington is going to be available, and A-Ray Gilbert. So your weapons kind of solve themselves. Running back kind of solves itself. You kind of know what you're going to do with Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton. Dejon Edwards getting some run as well. Offensively, the only real questions are at guard. Who is going to take over offensive guard, both left and right? I think there's 4 names kind of battling there. Xavier Truss, Devin Willock, Warren Erickson, and I'm missing a guy. Forgive me. But anyways, those are kind of the main questions. Defensively, they've been playing 45 guys annually for 3 years now under Smart. So they play a bunch of dudes that you already know. It's just they haven't been starting forever. So they'll figure out kind of their identity as the year progresses for sure.
What are your thoughts on September 3rd's matchup against Oregon?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup, and a lot of storylines, obviously, with Dan Lanning being there, new head coach and coming from Georgia. I don't expect necessarily a close football game. I know that sounds bad. I think Oregon's got a ways to go to be able to do the things schematically that is required to win under what Lanning wants to do, if that makes any sense. It's a long time coming, and even Cristobal experienced this towards the end of the year. They were getting kind of thumped up by teams like Utah. So as well as they've recruited under Cristobal and as well as they've continued to recruit under Lanning, I still think they're a couple years away from being able to win a 4-quarter football game against a roster like Georgia's.
So my next question is, what is your prediction for who wins the conference this season?
In terms of their conference schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by far, in terms of the talent disparity between what is available at Georgia and what is available in the SEC East, there has not been a larger talent disparity since Kirby Smart's been there. So 7 years, they are so much further ahead than everyone else in the conference in terms of when you look at it on paper, they look just far away and better than everybody else, and they'll be favored as much in every football game. When you look at their schedule this year, it is so lackluster. I think you'll see them be favored by at least 7.5 to 10 points in every football game that they're in. The spread will be kind of tight against Florida. People will expect them to play them tight because it's a rivalry game. And people will expect Tennessee to give them a run for their money. So everyone's buying South Carolina as well. I think they're a couple years away as well in terms of talent acquisition. It is the SEC. Someone can sneak up on them one Saturday, as they have in years past, in terms of Kirby Smart football teams, but they didn't last year. But I don't think this defense is going to be on that level of dominance. So maybe they won't be as will breaking as last year's defense was. Midway through the third quarter last year, you could literally see football teams quitting and just kind of packing it up and going home because they were getting thumped so hard. So I don't think that's going to be the case this year, but I don't think anyone's quite within a shouting distance just yet.
So with Nakobe Dean going pro, how do you think the Georgia defense will be like?
I see all the Philly gear. Are you an Eagles fan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So you know this already, probably from just watching him and hearing about him up there in Philly. The most important thing that Nakobe did for everyone else was keep everyone on their P's and Q's in terms of schematics, right? Like making sure everyone is in the right place at the right time is more valuable than any height, weight, speed, or 40 that you can bring me from Nakobe Dean. He's never going to be the biggest. He's never going to be the fastest, but he's always going to move first and he's always going to speak first. And that's really, really valuable. And when you take that away from a defense, someone has to replace it. So when it comes to who's going to be the voice of this defense, they didn't really lose it on the very front level of the defense because it was Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith returned this year for the University of Georgia, despite the fact that he could have been probably definitely the 16th guy drafted last year. And he is an extreme leader, an extreme alpha. So having his voice around the program is very, very important for them this year. On that middle level of the defense, one of those young linebackers is probably going to have to step up. And then in the back end, you got guys like Chris Smith and Dan Jackson who have played a lot of football at this point, and are more than willing to speak up. So you lose a lot more leadership than you do statistical, value. I mean, there's a lot of box score value that Nakobe Dean brought to Georgia for the last 3 years. Do not get me wrong. He was second, third, or first in tackles every single year he was here or at the University of Georgia. But it was so much more than that. And that's the value that you're going to lose and that you're going to have to replace. Not just, hey, the guy had 70 tackles last year and 6 sacks. We just got to go find that. No, it's far more than that. And it has to come from a variety of places.
What are you most looking forward to watching this season when you cover the University of Georgia?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of like this every year, honestly. Your fan base here that you cover or that speaks to you on a day-to-day basis, they talk far much more about offensive development and quarterback development. If you look across the league, no one talks about Georgia starting quarterback in terms of top 5s, top 6s, top 10s, whatever. When they do quarterback rankings, when they talk about NFL quarterbacks, when they talk about the upcoming draft, Stetson Bennett's name will not be mentioned. And it's because he plays in an offense in which, if he is on par with every other quarterback that's been at Georgia since Kirby Smart's been here, he will throw for 2,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, and six interceptions. That's about the average for a 7-year span of quarterback play under Kirby Smart. And it's resulted in 1 national title and playing for 2, and winning the SEC once and having an opportunity to do it 3 times, right? I think if that all tracks up, I think they played for 3 SEC title games. They played for 2 national title games, and they won 1 in 7 years. But not with a high-flying offense, right? No Heisman winning quarterbacks, no 4,000 yards throwing. I think if there's anything I'm most excited for is, can they bridge that gap? I don't expect Georgia to suddenly become this LSU of 2019 just because they got a bunch of tight ends or whatever. I don't think they're going to throw it 45 times a game. I don't think they'll ever be that under Kirby Smart. But can you bridge the gap? Can you now throw it 32 times a game, throw for 305, and still run for $180? Can you become that offense? And if so, then I think teams will start, national media correspondents will start talking about your offense and your quarterback play like they do Clemson's, because that's what Clemson is. Trevor Lawrence was number 1 overall draft pick, throwing for 3,100 yards a season. He didn't rack it up every year. No, that's not what it was. But can you develop one of those guys? Can you develop an offense that people talk about like that? Because right now, Georgia's just the defensive school, and they just got a game managing quarterback, and they're in that kind of phase of winning national titles that Colt McCoy, or not Colt McCoy, but all those quarterbacks prior to Jalen Hurts, Tua, and Mac Jones were at Alabama. Right, they're winning games with Blake Simses of the worlds, and guys playing quarterback. Okay, that's what they're doing right now in the national media's perspective. That's what it looks like at Georgia. Can they bridge the gap somewhere? I think this year is important for that, because Stetson Bennett is talented, and I do think he can throw for 3,300 yards, 3,400 yards, and 32 touchdowns if given the leeway to do so, and that's the importance.
What are your thoughts on the wide receivers?
You know, it's a big talking point. Everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to talk about development of the wide receiver position. I'm a wide receiver and offensive line. I'm punting 2 classes. I'm punting 2 classes in 2 seasons. If they can hold on to these 2 guys that long, which odds are they won't. There's been so much turnover there and they're cleaning so much in terms of what the guys they're recruiting look like, what the position players look like, what they're asked to do. So much is changing there. I don't know what to think about the wide receiver room at Georgia right now. I think they're doing what we call cleaning house. If that were an NFL roster, that's a new GM over there. They're cleaning the whole thing out. They're changing so much in terms of the profile of kids they're recruiting, the profile of just kids they're allowed to get into the rooms with. Brian McClendon recruits at a so much different level and gets into a different level of rooms than Cortez Hankton kind of was at Georgia. So it's a total different thing, and I'm kind of waiting on my evaluation to kind of see. But in terms of the wide receiver room right now, Kirby Smart himself this spring said they have 2 SEC wide receivers, Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey. Those are his words, not mine. Marcus Rosemi-Jackson, extremely talented football player. Denilon Morse, extremely talented football player. Arian Smith can go, right? Dominic Blaylock was super talented coming out of high school, but has had some injuries. They have a bunch of talented football players, but they don't have any in terms of known commodities outside of, Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey. So it's a lot of question marks more than answers at wide receiver.
What is your early prediction for their record for this season?
Yeah, I've said it. I'm gonna hold by this. I think they go 12-0 and they lose by 18 points in the SEC championship game to Alabama. I think they walk through the schedule this season, man. If they get snuck up on, they get snuck up on, but it is bad. It's a lot of Missouri at home, road games looking like South Carolina, Columbia. Like, it's not hard. Okay. This is not a schedule that Georgia should lose a game to. If they lose a game, it's because they did not handle their business. Okay. That's not going up and getting beat. I highly doubt that happens this year. They are too good of a football team, and the SEC East is just not ready yet. Talk to me in 2023. Maybe one of these teams can beat them, not just sneak them, not sneak up on them. In 2023, someone can beat them. In 2022, no one can beat them but Alabama. The rest of them are going to have to sneak up on them. I hope they don't show up with their best performance that day.
My last question is, what is a typical day like for you during the off season and game days?
So during the off season, it's a lot of brand. I'm just going to sound so arrogant. A lot of brand management and exploration. A lot of like building relationships with people. Trying to play as many charity golf events as I can. Trying to see as many recruits as I can. Trying to go. I think in the month of May, I traveled 4,000 miles across the state of Georgia. I saw 35 high schools, trying to see as many coaches as I could on the trail, develop as many relationships as I could with as many coaches, and B, see as many football players as I could and develop as many relationships with young men as I could, because relationships are king. That's what someone has taught me from an early age in my football life. During the season, it's a madhouse. During the season, it is game days can be up to 20-hour days, depending on what time the game is and whether or not it's a road game or whether or not I traveled to it. So it can get wild, but that's what it is. I tell people this all the time. Imagine, the primary team that we cover in this market where I work is the University of Georgia, and it's that football team. They got a decent hoops program that people somewhat pretend they care about. The baseball program is decent that people somewhat pretend they care about. Do not get it twisted. Football is the money winner around here. I got like 15 game days a year. That's it. 15. Think about that. There are 365 days to make money. I got 15 game days a year. Man, those are my breadwinners. I am a stress ball. I'm a freakazoid during those days. I'm stressed out trying to produce as much quality content as we possibly can. So yeah, that's kind of the dichotomy between a Saturday in the spring and a Saturday in the fall. A Saturday in the fall, oof, man, that butthole is tight, brother. We are puckered up all day long. We are nervous, and that butthole is tight for sure.
It's definitely going to be a very intense season this upcoming season, and college football starts up on August 27th, and definitely looking forward to just watching a ton of football starting.
I'm looking forward to laying the wood on Vandy at Hawaii at 10 o'clock at 10 o'clock at night on friggin' August 27th. How about that? Let's get some of that.
What other games are you looking forward to that weekend?
Oh no, man! I was just making the joke on chasing money late, man. I love a little Pac-12 after dark, and Hawaii is super extreme after dark for the gamblers, man. Stay away from gambling, kids. It's bad for you.
So thank you so much for your time, and I hope to have you back on maybe to recap a game.
Have a good one, man.
Okay, thank you.